locale. So, hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on our podcast, leveraging your emotional social intelligence for growth. Last month during our podcast, we had an amazing discussion focusing on self-expression and its composites, which consist of emotional expression, assertiveness, and independence. A good reminder of the importance of self-expression is expressing emotions is important for conveying authenticity and building trust. Our nonverbal communication, such as facial expressions, can greatly impact how others perceive us and respond to us. Also remember, showing emotion doesn't make us weak or vulnerable. In fact, it can lead to effective and successful interactions with others. This week, we are going to focus on the interpersonal composite, and we have a robust conversation on the composite after a short round of introductions of our speakers. And I will jumpstart that. Hello, my name is Tyson Werner, and I provide the EQI 2.0 assessment to early careers and senior executives to identify their strengths and work on areas of development to improve their personal and professional growth. This helps them create a positive environment with their direct reports, peers, senior leadership, and outside vendors. I own Evolutionary Talent and partner with Catherine Fasanello, founder of My Higher Roads, helping those who are starting their career or making a change. That is a little information about me and how I use the EQI 2.0 assessment. And then we'll learn a little bit from Cinzia. And after Cinzia, we'll listen to Kathysue, and then we'll take your question, Catherine.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cinzia. I'm a global leader in a multinational company, and I have a double hat. I work on culture and employee engagement, but I also work on leadership development across the globe, so across different cultures. And I'm also a coach, and I use a lot EQI 2.0 when it comes to coaching, especially for the clients that work with me with this tool in particular. I'll hand it over to Kathysue for a short introduction.
Hi, thanks again so much, and thanks to everyone who's with us today. I take an integrative treatment approach when working with clients who suffer from complex trauma, which include symptoms of depression, suicidal tendencies, and isolating and distrusting behaviors. And I've been using the EQI for over 12 years, and I also teach all of the 15 ESI components of our emotional quotient as a comprehensive skill set. And with that, I'll turn it back to Tyson, and he'll take a question and begin our discussion.
Yes. Catherine, did you have a question? Did you want to raise your hand again and I can take you off mute? All right. And here you go. You are on mute, Catherine, just so you know.
We have lost Catherine.
Okay, that's all right. If she jumps back on, we'll go ahead and take that question. All right, so for now, we're going to go ahead, and I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And remember, if you have any questions like Catherine did, we invite you to raise your hand and we will bring you off mute. We have a great conversation and knowledge sharing with an interactive audience. Also remember, you can message us here directly on LinkedIn at any time. So a general overview of the EQI 2.0 assessment is that there are 5 main composite groups. 1, self-perception. 2, self-expression. 3, interpersonal. 4, decision-making. And 5, stress management. Each composite is composed of 3 subcategories. And today we are going to focus on the interpersonal composite and its 3 subcategories and definitions at the beginning so we were all on the same page. The first subcomposite is interpersonal relationships, which refers to the skill in developing and maintaining mutually satisfying relationships that are characterized by trust and compassion. The second, empathy, is recognizing, understanding, and appreciating how others people feel. Empathy involves being able to articulate your understanding of others' perspective and behaving in a way that respects others' feelings. The third is social responsibility, willingly contributing to society, to one's social groups, and generally to the welfare of others. Social responsibility involves acting responsibly, having social consciousness, and showing concern for the greater community. And I'm going to take a quick peek here and stop there after the definitions to see if anybody has a question. And I see that we do not have any questions. Catherine, I see you joined. You were brought on, but I think you fell off due to internet connection. So again, raise your hand if you guys would like. I am going to start off by asking Cinzia to tell us a little bit about the interpersonal composite and some strategies to improve.
Yeah, thanks, Tyson. So the interpersonal relationship is near and dear to my heart because I'm a people-oriented person. So I really do enjoy working on interpersonal relationships. And I think from a leadership standpoint, we can look at interpersonal relationship from two perspectives. On one side is if you're leading a team, is how to inspire your team, how to build that trust that you can earn as a leader, but also you can give. And trust can be given immediately, or maybe you are a type of person that you need a proof to give trust. It depends on how you are, really. But building trust, building authentic connection with others is fundamental if you're leading a team. And when I say authentic connection, I mean sharing a little bit about your emotional side if you're more reserved, if you're more analytical, because emotions are the first elements that bring together people, that connect people. The second point is also gaining buy-in from others, right? It can be in your team, but it can also be other stakeholders. So the interpersonal relationships are everywhere in our life, even outside of the corporate world. um, I think there is another element that is interesting when we think about interpersonal relationships, and is the cultural element. If you have been with us in the past podcast, you know that I'm really passionate about multicultural environments, and I have been working with a tool which is called GlobeSmart that gives you an overview of how different cultures approach social connections. Yeah, cultures that are more independent versus cultures that are more oriented to consensus. For example, Asian cultures versus US culture, or North European countries' culture. We have cultures that are more for equality, and cultures that value more the status and to be respected. Again, big differences from east to west of the world. We also have cultures where direct feedback is okay. Like again, I'm taking the example of the US because I know many of you are in US, but also in many European and EMEA countries. In other cultures, uh, take the example of India or other Asian cultures, feedback can be very much indirect. And so the way you build interpersonal relationships can be very much influenced by where you are, and also by your own personal culture as a person, the culture of the company you live in. Um, but I think at the basis, and this is my personal view, trust is what creates solid relationships. And a tip that you can easily consider is, if you think about a list of people you don't have a good relationship with, or you don't have the relationship that you would like to have with them in terms of being open, honest, authentic, collaborating together, not being anxious when you go into a meeting with this person, then the question that you can ask yourself is, what have you done to build that trust? Have you given some kind of trust? Or have you just received trust? And I think the other interesting point, and Tyson will cover it with empathy, is when you focus on interpersonal relationships, is also easy to focus maybe too much on the needs of others, and maybe less on your own needs. And this goes back to the second podcast that we held on self-perception and our ability to pursue our own goals, our our own goals less important or as important as the needs of others. And interpersonal relationship is one of the areas that needs to be balanced very well with this other aspect of your own needs and your own self. So since I spoke about empathy, Tyson, asking you a little bit about empathy and how that relates to this world.
Yes, excellent, Cinzia. You touched on a lot of key things that I'm sure our listeners are picking up on the interrelationship between the different composite groups, either the subcomposites or the primary composites themselves, and how balance is so critical. So, to start with empathy, empathy is vital to our relationships in the work environment and personal life. At work, empathy enables us to cooperate with others and understand where they are coming from, even if we do not agree with them. Empathy comes in many ways, and we must understand how others feel and their thoughts associated with those feelings. Empathy also is when we see someone else sad and we become sad based on their emotions and experiencing them ourselves. Having compassionate empathy takes relating to the person's emotions one step further by getting them to take action on those emotions. Let's say if I notice Chinzi or Kathy Sue are frustrated with a process at work, and I become frustrated because they're frustrated constantly. Instead of us just sitting there in frustration together, we then are able to move through that frustration to find a solution. But understanding where they were coming from, how they got there, and looking for a solution that satisfies that emotional sadness, joy, excitement, or curiosity. So, again, remember balancing empathy is crucial. And when we talked about, Chinzia mentioned low and high empathy levels and how it can be good or bad, vice versa. If you're low empathy, it can come across as inattentive or unfeeling or inhumane, selfish and self centered. If you are in the middle of the road for your empathy, you come across as sporadic in attention to others. And you tend toward careful, focused attention, but only for certain people. And on the high end, you come across as aware of or concerned for and sensitive to other people's needs, resulting in both compassion and active listening, which is good. But be cautious because too much empathy can be or sound like you are unable or unwilling to differentiate yourself and your emotional needs from others. It can seem dishonest, like you're holding back the truth when it may hurt, or you are emotionally dependent upon the other person. And I keep saying it, but balance is key. And in the workplace, we know teamwork is crucial, and it's important to build good relationships with coworkers, even when not working on a specific project or task together. Empathy plays a vital role in fostering a smooth working relationship. Without it, conflicts and disagreements can easily arise. It is also essential for management to exhibit empathy towards their employees. Bosses who lack empathy may engage in unfair practices, such as punishing employees, pushing employees to work beyond their limits, or being overly harsh when mistakes are made. Research has shown that workplaces with higher levels of empathy have better outcomes, including increased performance, sales, and leadership abilities. To end my piece on empathy, a good immediate action is to go beyond listening to words and pay attention to the nonverbal communication, eye contact, gestures, posture, and tone of voice, because they are all valuable emotional cues. And routinely ask for and consider people's needs and perspectives in meetings and discussions, or practice random acts of kindness. One small gesture can communicate your concern for those around you. And with that, I know Catherine has a question, and we're going to come to that after Kathysue because it's an excellent question that'll open up to all three of us on how do we get people to take the assessment, because some people just don't understand the value of it. But Kathysue, will you please provide us some information about social responsibility?
Sure. And thanks, Tyson. And I think everybody will notice that empathy fuels or feeds into social responsibility really well. And as Tyson said, social responsibility is a person's willingness to help or give back to others, their social groups, and society in a responsible, socially conscious manner for the overall greater community. And this can take the form of volunteering at your local food bank, faith based organizations, your child's school, or even being a foster parent. So remember that a normed score of EQ falls between 90 and 110. So if you score low or under 90 in social responsibility, you may be disrespectful or insensitive to others and probably don't care too much about your community or environment. If you score high or above 110, you're probably pretty active in the community and aware of what your community may need. You're a giving person, you're focused on what the members in your social group or community need. And people usually think of you as thoughtful, giving, and supportive. However, if you score between 90 and 110 on social responsibility, you have an in between of both the low and the high, right? So you think of it as a sometimes or depends on type of situation that requires a level of appropriate judgment or understanding. For instance, maybe you're only actively supportive of the sports team your child participates in versus being supportive of both sports teams playing out on that field. Well, it's normal to want your child's team to win, and if they do, another team has lost. And we have to remember that because ultimately that team who's lost also needs your support. So it's always about balancing your 15 ESI components that make up your EQ. And without a balanced social responsibility component, you may become a martyr by always putting your community or social group first ahead of your own needs, or you may sound too preachy or overly committed to the community. And you may even lose your autonomy by over identifying with your community or social group. So, in a nutshell, if your social responsibility is too low, add, like try to increase, be more sensitive, be a little bit more respectful and concerned. Think about how many times you say I as opposed to when you could be saying we. And if your social responsibility is too high, decrease. Try to be a little less sensitive, respectful, and concerned. And think about how many times you say we when you should be saying I. So, a key strategy that works universally throughout all of the 15 ESI components of EQ, and something that I'll continue to say probably throughout all these podcasts, is mindfulness. Be mindful of your ability and willingness to help and give back to society, and in relation to your personal life's responsibilities. Because we don't always have to be physically active in our communities. Sometimes we can be that person who calls or writes for donations or who volunteers once a month instead of every week. Our responsibility to our community has to be balanced with our personal lives as well. So I'll stop there so that we can take that question, and I'll hand it back to Tyson.
Great and amazing information, Kathysue, as well as you, Cinzia. So the question that was posed from Catherine Fastenella, she said that she's in the middle of a storm, and so connection is a little bit spotty. But she asked, how do you convince people to take this EQI 2.0 assessment so that they understand that there's true value in the assessment?
That's a very good question. And I think the soft skills that we are talking about today can be the answer. So if I can just share this thought that just came into mind is if you want to be able to run assessments, of course you need to be certified, but the first point is to be able to share your own experience. So if this assessment changed you and how you perceive yourself. For example, when I took it the first time during my certification, I realized things about myself that I thought I knew at my age. I mean, it's not that I'm old, I'm 46, but you think, okay, for 46, I pretty much know myself. No, false. There is always room for improvements. And so, bringing there your own experience, because if you want to promote it, you need to have taken it. It makes you be authentic and show your experience, and you create trust in the other person, and they will trust that you are sharing something true and valuable. I think all goes back to empathy, interpersonal relationships. How do you see it, Tyson and Kathysue?
Yes. Well, I see it like this. I always let the individual know, just like you said, the value of gaining that self reflection and having that introspection of yourself, because we do often perceive ourselves as sometimes better than what we are, or with a caveat or a little bit of bias, because we are who we are as individuals, and it's sometimes hard to take that outside perspective, almost like taking on somebody else's emotions and to acquire them and hone them as our own. So I like to let each individual know the value of the assessment and how much information you can glean from the assessment, but not only what that assessment will provide for the here and now. It's like you said, it's something that we know the EQI 2.0 assessment is a snapshot. So you can constantly improve. And as individuals who are always seeking to better themselves, how else do you better yourself without truly having an understanding of yourself on an emotional, intricate level that pairs with your IQ and your graduate studies and your degrees? But how do I interact with these people in the world? So I always like to bring that to light, to let people know that yes, you may have a great sense of yourself, and yes, it may resonate with you deeply. It should. That's why it's a level B assessment. That's why we have to get certified to provide it. That's why it has been normed. But there is great value in it. Kathysue, do you have anything?
Well, really, I agree with both of what you said. You got to make it personal. You have to share your own experiences. You have to show your vulnerability. Um, but you also have to understand its marketability. This is a tangible measurement, which means you can see the results. It isn't pie in the sky. It's not invisible. You have to show them. I mean, we talk a lot about the subscales like we are today, but you have to put them into practice. You have to show that they're teachable skills. I don't just talk about this stuff. I teach it. And there's specific concrete strategies that can be associated with each one of these 15 sub skills. And it's universal across the board. This can be used in any culture, any age, any group population. That it's just a very good, tangible, universal assessment, and that's
Ka-
really just how I market it.
Kathysue, you touched on a very critical piece, and it was another question brought to me from Catherine. And it was, do you think this test is cultural? And then are certain groups less sensitive to this test or assessment?
I don't know what the word sensitive, like if you could explain what you mean by sensitive.
They didn't describe it. I would assume, just off of guess, is that do you think one group feels better than the test, like they don't need to take it?
Mm.
From a cultural standpoint, that could be hard to answer. I would say that would be
Or
based on the
maybe
individual.
if we consider also the cultural element, if Catherine meant if there are differences in the results depending on the culture you're in, yeah, that definitely there will be, because of
And
what I
was
said
that,
before.
yeah, Cinzia, will you just highlight that blip there one more time for us, please?
Yeah,
About
so maybe Catherine, yeah, she had a connection issue, so maybe she lost that piece. So there, I use another tool that is GlobeSmart for intercultural competency. And what I've noticed is that some of the subskills that we have analyzed so far and the other ones that we will analyze, like assertiveness, for example, or that is considered that we saw last month, that is considered okay in Western culture, sorry, in Eastern culture, in Asia, for example, can be considered rude, to be assertive, to be clearly stating your needs. So in cultures like Asian cultures, the consensus, the connection, and the consensus is fundamental before getting to a decision. While maybe in the Western world, independence is is much more the day-to-day bread, so to say, or equality versus status and the importance. Like there are some countries, for example, in Middle East, where you need to wait for the person that, from a hierarchical standpoint, is the higher in the room to speak before you are allowed to speak, and same in some Asian culture. So that is affecting the interpersonal relationships. It doesn't mean it's bad or is good or bad. It's just different. And I think even though, for example, when I run reports for EQI 2.0, I always select the global view that gives you a comparison with the global, uh, let's say, group of people that have been analyzed to create this sample group, so to say. But still, when I run it, I always think about the person I'm talking to, and I'm thinking about, oh, is this person coming from this region? Maybe I try to make some assumption that I will discuss with the person and validate them, because maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what I don't know. So discussing with the person is also important.
Amazing. And thank you, Cinzia. And I think we're getting close to the end, but you spoke on one thing, Cinzia, about the cultural norm groups. And I know that we each can provide insights. Those who are curious about the norm, can I be normed in different categories, or is it just global or US, or how does that work?
Yeah, we the categories can be different. You can select global, which I think in for example, if you run it for multicultural, multinational companies, that could be the best option to consider. But there are also other groups like North America. There are some specific countries. The company that developed EQI 2.0 has certainly focused on the global perspective, US, North America perspective, and some selected countries around the world, some European countries. So now, off the top of my mind, I don't remember exactly which one. It's a handful. So my suggestion, in general, unless your activity is just focused on US, for example, where you can really compare to the US environment, my suggestion is always to go with the global version if you want to have like a little bit of wider view. Then you can also select the age range that you're interested in, the population, if you mean the whole population, or the professional area, so those who are actually active and working. Those are refinements that are specific for the coaches that run reports. But in general, I think the global one for me is, for my own needs, is a little bit more valuable. I don't know, Kathysue, what do you think about that?
Well, I've actually run reports just like for the same person, either just to see if there's a difference with age, gender, and also whether it's in North America or dealing with a client out in Europe. And what I found was it wasn't, there weren't that many differences. I just run reports depending on, I run them in North America, and I don't even bother with, and they, I don't separate them like I used to, because I found in the past that the differences it's a moot point. Um, so,
Mm.
but it's a highly normed assessment measure. So It's one of the,
Yeah.
it's one of the best ones out there.
Yeah, and I think that is, the choice of the coach when you run a report as a coach. But if you audience that you're now listening to us, if you are potentially a client assessing yourself, you don't need to think about that. You don't need to worry because that is something a coach would do when they create the report.
Right.
All right. Well, amazing information, and thank you for sharing more detailed about the assessment, the norm groups, and kind of how it works when it breaks down to the individual's preference and setting and how it interrelates with the coach. But for the sake of time, we are at 6 o'clock. So I want to thank you all for joining another amazing podcast. And we hope the knowledge sharing was valuable. Remember to always balance your emotional social intelligence and that we can always all improve. The next podcast will discuss decision making. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.